Good morning, everybody. Bright and early on day 3 of RSA. It's so good to see everybody. My name's Sharon Chan. I lead our Deloitte U.S. Cyber Defense and Resilience business. I'm so excited to moderate our panel today with Chris and Amit. I'm going to let them start and do some quick introductions as we get started. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, good morning. Happy to be here. Chris Gossett. I am SailPoint's Chief Growth Officer. I have been in the identity space for the last 25 years. I kind of stumbled into this in the late 90s when we weren't even calling it identity. And I've had a couple different gigs in the identity world, helped a lot of customers be successful with SailPoint software, both our on-premise version and our SaaS software. And in my role today at SailPoint, I'm really helping make sure that we keep our finger on the pulse of the market and we build the right solutions for problems customers are solving today, and then also thinking about where the market's going and what those problems are going to be tomorrow as well. So super excited about the discussion today. Thanks so much for having me.
Fabulous. Thank you.
And I'm Amit Shikar. I'm a partner at Deloitte within the cyber risk services, focused on identity and access management. Been in the space, I think every time Chris and I talk, kind of reflect on how long we've been doing this. So I've been doing it over 20 years, a long time. I do a lot of my work now is in life science and healthcare, but have served other industries, tech, retail, automotive. I also lead our go-to-market relationship with SailPoint. So all the work that we're doing together, not just in serving clients, but also thinking through the future of identity, how that would reflect on products, how that reflect on our services, how we can really serve the market better. So that's been a journey we've been on. Last couple of years, Chris and I have gotten to know each other, had this conversation amongst ourselves, did this survey recently as well, where Deloitte and SailPoint went out to 500 large organizations, did a survey around getting insights on where their identity is, what's the journey they're on, what are some of the challenges, and where they would like to be. So it's been a great journey. It's been a great partnership. So excited to talk about what we found there and what we're working on together.
Absolutely. Should we also mention that we both started in identity when we were 5 years old? That's why we look so young.
That's 5 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Along with the rest of the audience, for sure.
Yeah.
No, thank you for the introductions. And I think the insights between the services and the product side are really going to be fascinating. I would love to get some of those nuggets from the survey you mentioned too as we go through. So let's dive in. We'll start with a couple of prepared questions, but please, audience, think of your questions. We'll break as we go to make sure we're engaging y'all with some questions as well. So Amit, let me start with you. Curious about the current landscape, and our enterprise clients are getting more complex every day, right, in their technical landscape. The threats, the bad actors are progressing in their attack vectors. How would you characterize the state of identity today? Are we making progress, or are we just keep continuing to fall behind?
I think it's like one of those sci-fi questions where you're traveling at the speed of light, and so relativity plays a part here. I think we're definitely making progress in where we were. We talked about the experience we have and reflecting back on 20 years, where setting up an identity platform took 3-4 months, and that was a victory in itself, just to have a platform. And then you got AD connected and then a couple of apps, and you're down a year and a couple of $1 million. I think we've come a long way from that part. It's also reflected in the importance that identity security has now within boards and the C-level. And we talked about the survey. It was a very interesting fact to see that about 70% of the organizations, the key decision makers around identity wasn't just the CISO, but the CEO or the CIO, either one or both, were involved in that decision. So it speaks to the importance that identity now has. Right? Last few years, we've been talking about zero trust, and there is broad recognition that identity is the new perimeter. Right? That's how you're going to secure the enterprise. You can do all these other things in SOC and everything else, but if you don't know who your people are, you're not really going to solve it effectively, the cyber risk problem. And so with that importance, there has been investment. I think there has been growth and progress in how organizations have matured their identity programs. But at the same time, it's the question of that relativity comes in. The landscape that we're trying to secure, the applications, the systems, the users, the whole ecosystem is evolving, not even evolving, it's almost changing, right? I think evolving is too slow a word. It's changing so fast that it's hard to keep up. And that's been the challenge, right? You already have a sprawl of applications. You couple that up with all the transformation that keeps happening, and the speed of change is, getting faster. You have cloud, you have SaaS, all of those things coming in. It's become hard to keep up with that changing landscape. And so with that realizations, what organizations have tried to do is take a risk-based approach or try to narrow down the targets to say, we're not going to boil the ocean, but let's start to do, how do we manage risk better? How do we focus on our crown jewels and such? And there, the challenge has been getting that data from the organization. So what is high risk truly, right? If we have a sense, it's all the SOX apps, or it's these apps and that apps, well, you really dig in and try to figure out what those actually are, and there's a lot of gaps in that data. So I think if I reflect upon current state, it's really that there is progress. I think the speed at which we can integrate now and advance and expand the footprint of identity is definitely faster. But it's been a struggle to keep up with the speed of change within organizations as well.
So we're making progress. We've got to go faster. Risk-based approach. Chris, what would you add?
Yeah, I love relativity. That's really cool. I may start using that in the future, right? I think that really captures it well, right? It's the identity teams are just being asked to do so much more than they were even just a few years ago. And it's almost like if you could maybe rewind the time, go back in time with relativity and have the tools and the perspective that we have today, man, the world would have been easier 10 years ago. But that idea of trying to think about identity teams being able to be asked to manage franchisees, employees, machines, AI agentic agents are on the horizon. We're having conversations now about the quantum singularity moment where encryption gets broken. Like this idea of that's a lot for an identity team to take on. And so I think you're right. I think the industry has made huge progress. We have so many successful customers. They're getting so much value out of their identity solutions. But unfortunately, the businesses is we'll do more. We're going to keep buying more applications. We're going to keep creating data at the speed of light, right? And that idea of how do you find that risky access and put those controls in place without having to hire 1,000 people to do it, that I think is a constant of that. Identity teams never seem to have quite enough budget and funding. And so it really is, how do they do more with less? And I think we have made some really good progress, but there's still a lot more work to do, right? And I think that's the thing that is really exciting about our space, is that the C-level and the board is starting to realize, this is the new perimeter, right? There is controls you can put in place here in a cost-effective manner, and being able to communicate that to the business is becoming even more and more important.
Now, you introduced some great concepts there. I think we went about 6 minutes before AI, so it's perfect.
There you go. Is there a clock in there?
We may be winning that game.
We promised ourselves that we'll wait to say AI, because once we say AI, it's all AI.
Yeah,
right. Well, there's definitely more to come on the AI front. I'm curious, you both were talking a bit about the challenges and the barriers to success. Chris, maybe starting with you, what would you characterize as the top couple of barriers that clients are really fighting through today to progress their identity agenda?
Yeah, I kind of touched on one of them at the end of that last sentence, but I think it really is that kind of organizational awareness. I think when we talk to customers, it's almost like at the C-level, there's a bit of overconfidence of this is all under control. This makes sense. I have an SSO solution. Identity solved, right? And then as you get lower in the organization to the identity practitioners, they all realize, oh, wait, we don't have enough applications onboarded. We don't have the right level of control and sophistication, and we're kind of running to keep up with the rest of the business. So I think one of those big challenges is being able to articulate to the leadership in the business the art of the possible when it comes to identity. We're on the cusp of being able to have a real least privilege model across all identity types, and to be able to do that at scale across a vast application landscape, and being able to talk about the benefits of that and what that means for the business, not just from a security and risk perspective, but also from a user experience perspective and a compliance perspective and efficiency perspective. It's such a really compelling story. We just have to be able to have the right vocabulary, the right language, and be able to simplify that is probably the right term for the business to really understand the art of the possible, and then to see the value there. So I think that buy-in from exec leadership is a big challenge. I think the survey talked a little bit about that as well, of that, how do you get from here to there, is something, again, I think we're making progress on in the industry, but something we probably need to do an even better job of explaining just in layman's terms to the rest of the business how that works.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you talked about buy-in, which definitely kind of reflects then in what do you need for the program, and if you don't have buy-in, you don't get those things. So if we look at tactically what the outcomes were in terms of challenges in the survey, it was technology sprawl, which we talked about, and how diverse the technology is that you're trying to integrate with and solve for, which is changing on a day-by-day basis. I think 97% of the respondents, and this is a sample size of 400, and these are large organizations, said that they're in a hybrid cloud environment. So not just, we are on-prem or cloud, it is cloud and multi-cloud, right? So that's a pretty complex problem to solve for when you try to secure those resources across multiple platforms. And only 12% said we've gotten to a point where we feel comfortable with the amount of integration we have done across those diverse technology landscapes. So technology definitely came out as, I think 54% of the respondents said the technology, just our legacy technology to manage from an identity perspective, and the target system and how it's evolving was a big challenge. The next one became people. No, just people to manage the technology, the identity technology, and implement it. And we've seen, as an organization serving hundreds and thousands of clients across the world, we've had a challenge in hiring for people in the demand for identity as it's grown over the years, right? Our clients have kind of seen the same thing, right? They need people to manage this technology once we've delivered it, or even in some cases, they're trying to implement it themselves. And finding that talent, not just in America, even you have offshoring centers throughout the world, whether it's Europe and Southeast Asia and different parts of the world, it's become very hard to find the right talent with the demand for these services. So I'd say if any one of us is looking for a career choice for our children, I can say this identity is a good choice, and the demand continues to be high. So it was really that technology and finding the people, and again, that all manifests in now I need more money to solve for all of this. So budget became that third pillar of that challenge from a survey perspective, and saying I don't have enough money. So you don't have the buy-in, you have a diverse technology set you're trying to solve for, you don't have the people, and you don't have the money to solve for it. So this kind of creates that circle of challenge, that we'd say that identity security owners and VPs and CISOs are facing in terms of solving for this problem.
A lot of complexity, right? A lot of challenges there. Let me ask one more question, and then we'll turn it to the audience to see what all is on your mind as well. So you talked about the challenges. I'm curious what good looks like then. Like, think about a mature, modern identity program that you're working with at your customer client organizations. What are some of those markers of people getting it right today?
I think just thinking about who's getting it right in its entirety is in itself a challenge, because there are challenges all over. So some people have gotten some part right, or some organizations have some other pieces right. But it's really a counter to what we've been talking in terms of challenges. So the first thing that defines good really is there is a buy-in within the organization, right? So the good programs have an executive stakeholder, CISO or CIO, CTO, CEO, who believes in the vision on what you're trying to solve for and why it's important to the organization. And not just at the executive level, but also kind of spreading out into IT, HR, legal, all the different departments, application owners. They've bought into that vision and are invested in making that successful, right? I think Chris talked about the different identity types that you solve for. So we think about employees when you think about identity, but you have contractors, you have consultants, you have the board, you have interns, you have contingent workers, third parties. There's a pretty big sprawl of different identity types that you solve for. And as an identity owner, I'm the VP of identity and organization, I try to solve for all those identity types by myself through technology, I'm going to fail. Right? I need procurement, I need vendor management, I need HR, all these departments to be bought into whatever and however we're trying to solve for it and be part of that solution. So really good starts with buy-in and ownership at the right level for the right problem, right? I can, as an identity security owner, I can develop the technology or deploy the technology to solve for a specific use case, but that doesn't make me the owner of that identity type or the use case that we're trying to solve for, right? So I'd say it starts there, and then it kind of trickles down into the other challenges that I listed out, right? Then you have the right technology. You're not stuck in a legacy platform where an upgrade takes you 6 months or an integration takes you 3 months, and just keeping the lights on is a big challenge. So you have a technology platforms that robust and nimble, and we have here Chris, who's
There you go. That's you choose the right technology
exactly.
platform.
You have SailPoint is what good looks like. You have an operating model where you have the right talent, whether internal or external, to manage that platform and not just keep the lights on, but really start to evolve it as things change in your enterprise, right? Do you do a program and you have 20, 30, 50 applications integrated, and then you say, I'm just going to manage that for the rest of my identity journey? That's not sufficient. You got to evolve it, you got to change it and expand it. So you need an organization then, or a set of people in a team that's going to manage it. And you have to be really honest. Like, can we really hire the talent internally to do that? Do we have the capacity? Do we have the DNA in our organization to manage something like this? Or do we need a partner like Deloitte, someone else to go out and manage that?
Yeah.
So it's then the structures to manage that. And obviously, you need the money to then obviously invest in that technology and the people side. So I'd say that kind of reflects what good would look like.
Yeah, you touched on a couple things that just seem so important, right? I mean, program is the word that you used a number of times, and that really is, I think, what separates kind of good from great. Right? The companies that really say, like, this isn't a project, right? It is an identity program, and it's really helping from the very beginning institute that kind of culture of identity in the business, right? Yeah. That buy-in, and it's easy to just talk about buy-in, but getting stakeholders on board, helping them understand the role they play, so many identity teams, like, they're providing the framework there, but they don't necessarily know what should those policies be, what should those roles be, how does that work? That has to come from the business, or it has to be a cooperation to get that done. And starting from the very beginning of the program, instituting that culture, I think just makes things so much easier. Because the other thing you touched on that I thought was so relevant is it changes, right? And I think, if you establish the program with the idea of, hey, we're going 100 miles an hour from day one, and we're totally tapped out of capacity, the business is going to change, right? There's going to be a reorg, there's going to be a merger, an acquisition, there's going to be new applications that come on board. Change is going to happen. So planning for that in advance and having the right capacity to lean into those changes and to keep up with the business, to me, is one of those kind of markers of companies that do that well are so much farther ahead, because you don't want to be in that situation of, like, evangelizing the benefits of identity. Everybody's bought in, they understand how important it is, and all of a sudden, there's a reorg, and you're like, yeah, great, get back with me in a year and I'll be ready to do that. And it's like, okay, well, you got to keep up with us if this is so important and whatnot. So building that capacity and having that strong foundation, I think, is the key markers of success. The other thing I'd mention, and this is kind of the change that our industry's gone through, think about a few years ago, we were worried about compliance and worried about only the crown jewels, 10 applications, 50 applications, that kind of level. And, we had a lot of customization in that world to model things in the perfect way. I often joke that, the audit team, right? And if they say, hey, we want you to check this box in purple ink, well, we did a lot of purple inking and made that work because that made a ton of sense. That was who was paying the bills. As the space has evolved to build on compliance and IT efficiency into more security, trying to put a least privilege model in place, trying to have more applications covered, there's a natural tension there that says, I can't have that same level of customization across 2,000 applications that I did for 50. So building that relationship with the business, helping the business understand the problems that the team's trying to solve, and then also saying, look, let's try to avoid customizations, except where it makes a big difference for our business, invest in those areas, and in everything else, try to keep it more simplistic, more standardized, more uniform across the business. Those teams and programs that have that facet of, I'm going to bend where it's important, and I'm going to be rigid where it's not, to try to keep that technical debt as low as possible, makes it easier now to keep up with the business, to engage those stakeholders in a productive conversation where it's not just, yep, I got to get my purple ink pen out today and now I got to move to red tomorrow or whatnot. I think those kind of markers of building that resiliency in the identity team really helps keep them in front of the demands of the business. And now if you do that right, now you're involved proactively as a stakeholder, right? We'll talk a little bit about AI in a bit, but there's new challenges on the horizon. Well, if you have a seat at that table and you can now suddenly be influencing security around data and AI agents and whatnot, and you're solving those problems with the business before they explode out of control, so much easier to be proactive than reactive. But again, if you're like, yeah, come to me in a year because I can't keep up, then you're going to have this kind of progressive or ever evolving mess that you're always chasing.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. There is this cycle that we notice in organizations where there is a lot of momentum built by going out and evangelizing identity and why we need it. And then there's this fatigue that sets in because of what we end up doing there with all the customizations and the time that it takes, and the business just falls behind and they've got other priorities and they fall off. And then 3, 4, 5 years later, you're back in the cycle of evangelizing, bring them along to a point where they want to support you. So it's really getting out of that cycle and keeping them current and not trying to build, complex and customized things for every need that they have, but rather keeping it simple so you can pivot is very important for that.
So many good nuggets there on what good looks like. Collaboration, the teaming, standardization, really good points. And please join me in thanking Chris and Amit. I learned a ton. This was super interesting. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Put.
Yeah.